Hey everyone, over the past weekend I participated in this year's GMTK Game Jam. This is my third time participating in the jam, and previously in 2022 and 2020, I had a lot of fun making my entries, so I was excited to participate once again. This year, the theme was decided to be Roles Reversed, and I had just 48 hours to make a game with this theme, so let's get right into how I did that. So firstly, I had to come up with an idea for this game. To do so, I began just jotting down notes and chatting with some friends about potential ideas. The first idea I came up with was just a simple platformer where you control enemies instead of the player, hence the role reversal there. However, almost immediately after noting this, I realized how bland this idea is, as it's the most basic one I could do. Afterwards, I just started listing ideas like Pac-Man but you're the ghost, or Frogger but you place cars, or Flappy Bird but you're the pipe. However, I didn't just want to take an already existing game and make a fan game of it. Then, not long after, I jokingly mentioned Iron Lung but you're the fish, and one of my friends immediately told me that I might be onto something with that idea, and went on to mention a reverse fishing game. This was legitimately the catalyst for my entire game, as afterwards we were able to come up with the mechanics quite easily. For instance, David mentioned playing as a giant octopus at the bottom of the ocean who wants revenge on the fishermen. So, it uses fish as bait to hook the fishermen on the surface, and then drags them down to the bottom to eat them. This mechanic became pivotal to the game, and I owe a big thanks to David for his contribution. So with the main idea in mind, I immediately began thinking of other games that I could draw inspiration from, and I immediately thought of one of my favorite DS games, the legendary Starfy. This game has one of the most adorable art styles in any game, which I thought was perfect to try and replicate for this jam. And on top of this, I remembered an old commercial where Starfy takes on a giant squid with a fisherman in his boat, which was exactly the vibe I was aiming for. With that, I went ahead and began mocking up some concept art for the game, and here's what I got. Firstly, I just summarized what was mentioned before in terms of the plot and basic gameplay mechanics. Alongside this, I drew up a couple images. Firstly, an opening cutscene concept where basically the fish and squid would talk about fishermen or whatever before the game actually starts. Then, for the gameplay images, I basically noted it'd be a vertically scrolling screen, meaning you could move up and down easily, and on top of that, when the fish gets baited, the tentacle would come up from the ground and destroy the boat. So with this idea planned out, let's get on to actually making the game. To start making this game, I actually went ahead and made the art first and foremost. So I went ahead and designed a bunch of sprites for the game. The main goal of this art style was to make the outlines large enough to view, but also make sure that the colors are simple and bright, making everything look cute in a sense. So, with some basic art made, I began programming the game, and here's what the first build looked like. You could basically swim around and have the camera follow you, and if you press numpad 1, it would randomize the boat's location. This was basically just a dev key setup to make sure that the boat would stay within some certain boundaries. Next up, I got the tentacle to work, which was quite simple. You can see here that once you get hooked onto the boat, the tentacle comes flying up, and once it collides with the top of the boat, it gets destroyed. Next, I had to come up with an idea to work as bait, so I came up with the idea of a squid phone, and Peter came up with the idea that the squid could be a gamer. So with this, I came up with a couple redesigns of the squid but with a gamer headset, specifically the Razer Kraken because Kraken, and the squid phone was sprited basically as a reference to the magic conch shell from SpongeBob. So with that, in the next build I implemented a little animation for when you call the squid, and I added some more aesthetics to the game including some bubbles, seaweed, and coral. Alongside this, I actually wanted to overhaul the movement system. Right now, you could move around with the arrow keys, but this felt a little boring. So, I went ahead and made it so you can actually move by clicking and dragging your mouse along the screen. This felt way better in terms of giving the game a more fishy feeling, as you are swimming in the ocean rather than just gliding or walking. Alongside this, in this build, I made some mines that would later be turned into a hazard. I made it so that if you touch the hook without a conch shell, you'd be dragged off and it'd be game over. Plus, to get another conch shell, you'd have to dive back to the bottom of the screen as they are more of a consumable item. After this, I worked on adding a bit more visual flair to the game. In this case, I made it so that if you had a conch shell, it would ease in towards you, and I added some movement particles for the fish as well. Then, I changed up the squid attack to actually come up and pull down the boat, which made it look 100 times cooler. Then after that, I added a bit more visually to the game, which in this case meant adding some more particle effects for things like collecting a conch shell, and a proper sky with clouds. And with that, the main gameplay loop was complete. So next up, I went ahead and worked on the opening cutscene to the game. As I was thinking of what the actual cutscene would contain, I decided that I would make the dialogue and characters on the more funny side to add some charm to the game. We already decided that the squid would be known as Squid Gamer, which is obviously a reference to Squid Game and being a gamer, but I also wanted a funny name for the fish. So I came up with Vin Diesel, which is a reference to Mr. Baldhead, White Shirt Family Man himself, Mr. Clean. No, obviously it's a reference to Vin Diesel, like, I mean, come on.
Family.
So with the characters decided, I quickly came up with some dialogue that fit the both of them, specifically paying close attention to Squid Gamer's way of speech as I wanted to make him use gamer terms to add to his personality. And with the dialogue created, I simply just turned it into a cutscene with a bit of time, and made it so that during certain parts of it, Squid Gamer would hold out the enchanted conch shell, and Vin Diesel would swim in and out of the cutscene. I also decided here that the game would be called Baited, as it's a double meaning perfect for not only representing things like fish bait, but also the fishermen getting baited themselves. Finally, to get this game wrapped up, I created a title screen and high score system. Plus, I made it so that in the actual game, there would be a little countdown before the game begins, giving it that classic arcade feel. And with about 10 minutes to spare, the game was complete. So I went ahead and submitted the game with a Windows, browser, and Android build. The browser and Android build have a few bugs which I believed are caused by it just being on a different platform, but they are completely playable as far as I know. If you want to play this game for yourselves, there is of course a link in the description to the game's itch.io page, so go check it out and let me know your thoughts, and maybe in the future I'll expand on this game some more. And as always, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.